Alright everyone, welcome back again to some more Witch on the Holy Night. I honestly feel like both Sojiro and Aoko can't seem to catch a break in these situations at the moment, and it's just hilarious. But anyways guys, we're going to continue on from where we last left off, so I hope you all continue to enjoy. Thank you all for the love and support. Now let's do this. Alright guys, welcome back. Sojiro swallowed the discomfort making its way up his throat. He really wanted her to explain things a little less vaguely, but something she had just said necessitated further investigation.
待て青崎、あの子の話を聞き流したって、なんで？
いや、説明してもらったのは随分と前だし、あの頃はアリスの話あんまり信じられなかったのよね。私が素人だと思って大げさに自分の魔術を語ってくれてるな、舐められてるなとか。
In truth, if anyone hadn't taken the lesson seriously, it was Aoko. She would learn that lesson firsthand soon enough when she experienced just how real Alice's monsters were. She'd also discover how heretical the Mindster witches truly were in the world of magecraft.
その聞き流した内容は？
何でも強力な結界を張るプロイだって。アリスが受け継いだプロイは山ほどあるけど、その中でもえりすぐりの一つよ。捨てられたもの、忘れられたものを童話的に蘇らせるやつで、今まで誰も破ったことがないとか。それでついたあだ名が触れられぬもの。
The Untouchable, huh?
フラットスナークじゃないのか？
それもあだ名。とにかく正体がわからないやつばっかりなんで、一つの個体に複数の名前が付けられるの。フラットスナークはその中でも正体不明さはトップランクのデタラメぶりよ。あなた、ルイス・キャロルのスナーク狩りって本知ってる？
いや、そもそもルイス・キャロルというのは。
そっからか。ドジスン教授はそうね、特殊性癖を持った妄想紳士ってとこ？まあこっちは別にどうでもいいか。人によっては時間の無駄だろうし。今重要なのは彼が残した著作の方。スナーク狩りはね、スナークって呼ばれる正体不明の怪物を捕まえようと奔走する冒険家たちの話なの。キャロルらしい皮肉ばっちり、支離滅裂、意味不明、結末不在の本当に困った本で、一行は島で苦しみつつ最終的にはスナークを見つけるものの、見つけたベイカーは唐突に姿を消して終わってしまう。よくわからないもの探しに奔走する人間の風刺なんだけど、この遊園地において誰がベイカーで何がスナークかは言うまでもないでしょ。
Aoko elected not to share this, but Flat Snark had other popular names as well. The Enigmatic Island, the Five-Dimensional Plane. These names were not given to it by Alice, but rather muttered by mages whom the Mindsters defeated. In mathematics, snark is a term used in graph theory to refer to contradictory and impossible planar graphs. A plane proven to be unable to exist in this world was given the name apt for an ill-fated existence paradoxical in nature. The fairy tale monster ascribed this name was said to hold no form discoverable by man. Aoko also declined to mention something else. Flatsnark was a fairy tale monster that could grow. It would hide somewhere in the amusement park, continuously exhaling magical energy until the park completely transformed into a fantasy land.
脅かしてもしょうがないし。
何か言ったか？
別に。簡単に言って童話世界の再生がフラットスナークの力なの。この遊園地との相性は抜群でしょうね。何しろもともとが童話を元にした遊び場だから。
If this had been a business district, for example, Flatsnark would have posed far less of a threat. At most, its power would be limited to projecting the shadow of a dinosaur onto buildings' window panes.
あ、だからここは安全だって。ん？
Sojiro realized that something was wrong when he noticed a glutinous liquid dripping onto his back.
あ。
He looked up to the ceiling. Their eyes met. Before he had a chance to think, Sojiro hopped up from the floor.
青崎外だ
Taking the initiative, he jumped out from behind the counter.
バカ、何して。
Busy trying to stop him from committing an act of suicide, she also came to her feet. Immediately, she noticed something being brought to life overhead.
やばっ。危なかった。
Alright, I didn't think the face was that huge. The gargantuan mouth clamped shut. With no mascot to speak of, the burger joint itself began to transform into one giant monster.
もうなんで天井にピエロの絵なんて描いてんのよ、あの店。普通もっと違うところに労力割かない？そんなにピエロが好きなら入り口にでも飾っとけ。
Aoko aired out her grievances as she ran. There was no safe haven left. Moment by moment, the last remnants of civilization were being eroded away by fairy tales. The amusement park had reached the final stage of snarkification. It was not just the mascot characters that had been granted life. Like the burger joint, even the buildings had begun to transform. The roller coaster that made its way about the park writhed and twisted like a Chinese dragon. Aoko and Sojiro stared dumbfounded by the Ferris wheel, which had grown to over 250 feet in height. Hordes of breadmen closed in on them as if to offer tickets.
この列整理は間に合ってるっての。
Mobs of trinkets, actual kickshaws rampaged the park. Whenever a hole was punched in the envelopment, it was instantly filled. It was a battle of attrition with no end in sight. But that was a matter of course, as there were few fairy tales about limited resources.
なんかどうしようもないぞ。こいつら増える一方だ。
スナーク本体を探して。童話の怪物には本体に当たる器物があるの。それさえ壊せば遊園地から出られるはず。
本体ってどんな？
さっき言ったでしょ。童話の怪物は現実にないものだって。今までいなかったおかしなやつとか現実じゃありえないもの、それが本体。
おかしなやつって例えば？
だから命のある人形とか空飛ぶゴーカートとか。
Aoko paused her firing for a moment. After saying this out loud, she realized just how deep their grave was dug. The amusement park was a treasure trove of fairy tale-esque creatures on any given day. Who could say what was impossible amidst the newly transfigured knickknacks running around?
そっか、おかしくないやつなんて一つもないんだ。
Yeah, I was just thinking that too. I'm like, why are you telling him to find something weird when everything he's seeing for the first time is incredibly weird to begin with?
この中に紛れ込んでる。
Hoping that she was wrong, Aoko bit her bottom lip. Flat Snark was the type of ploy that deployed bounded fields. Seeing as it was commanding so many familiars, it would not be unusual for its main body to have little or even no defenses. Furthermore, if it was modeled from a story about it being untouchable and unidentifiable, it would be logical to assume that it would collapse in and of itself shortly after being discovered.
逆に言えば、見つければ私たちの勝ち。そんな脆いやつが雑魚に紛れ込む。木の葉を隠すなら森の中って言うけど。
This was closer to the truth than Aoko realized. As long as there was the slightest possibility of it being hit by one of Aoko's stray bullets, it would not dare appear in front of them. Its true form was orchestrating the park from somewhere safe.
でも、どこかに見えているはず。スナークは本の主題だもの。常にページのどこかにいないと主人公の資格がない。
But where? Thinking in the most basic terms, the Ferris wheel was very safe, as well as a symbol of the park itself, perhaps.
あの子を捕まえるのは。
Her eyes opened wide at the sudden suggestion. While Aoko had been trying to come up with a plan to overcome this stalemate, it seemed Sojiro had been racking his brain as well. His proposal was a simple one. If they could not find the snark, they just need to take out its master, Alice. Alice had not moved at all from the clock tower. Even from here, they could make out her figure, draped in moonlight.
それは一番ダメ。アリスを殺してもフラットスナークは止まらないし、このトンデモが外に溢れ出すことになる。だいたい私じゃあの子を殺せないから、よくて半殺しがいいところ。
A breadman, angered at the insults hurled toward its master, moved to attack and was mercilessly burned to a crisp. The two stood back to back, catching their breath. With no plan to speak of and no route to escape, they had reached rock bottom. Meanwhile, the oddities were forming a circle around their prey, as if they smelled blood in the water. Were they to be dragged into a bakery for the oven? Minced in the meat grinder at the butcher shop? Skewered and paraded around atop the carousel? The carousel? Walked the plank up the thorny pirate ship? After 2 years of slumber, they were eager to welcome their new guests.
一応聞いておきたいんだけど。
何？手短にね。今考え事してるから。
ああ、あの連中が何をしたいか嫌っていうほど伝わってくるんだけど、それってあの子の趣味なのかな。
その疑問はなかったわ。連中の人間嫌いは遊園地の怨念とフラットスナークの性格じゃない？基本的にまともなやついないから、アリスの使い魔って。あ、でも。
Aoko was unable to deny that there were some similarities.
それは結構。それで青崎の考え事って止める方法考えついたのか。
期待させて悪いけどお手上げ。ま、あんたが殺されれば止まるでしょうけど。
それは嫌だ。とりあえず逃げよう。
しずきくん？
She blinked in surprise at the sudden turn of events. Sojiro, who had until now been meekly following her lead, had grabbed Aoko's hand and pulled her with him into a suicidal charge towards the swarm of bread in an attempt to break out the encirclement.
意味わかんなすぎ。なんで今の流れでそうなるのよ、あんたは。
Aoko nonetheless followed Sojiro's uncharacteristically gung-ho lead, cursing him all the while. Sojiro would not be able to break through the surrounding wall of the enemies with brute force. Aoko regained their bearings to let fly a spray of magic bullets ahead of Sojiro. They broke through the net and ran as hard as they could. At this point, all that was left to do was what they had planned from the outset, aim to get out of the park. But not before addressing what needed to be addressed.
なんでよ、さっきはあんなに諦めよかったのに。
Aoko could not begin to comprehend Sojiro's reaction.
ミラーハウスの時と今は違うだろ。いいから走れ。
違わないわよ。あんたを殺そうとした私も、あんたを殺したいアリスも、理由の結果も同じよ、私たち。
Though she wondered what was getting her so worked up, Aoko did not stop. She told herself that the degree of Sojiro's stupidity charging the breadmen so recklessly had caused her to lose her cool.
あのね、一緒に逃げてるぐらいで勘違いしないでくれる？言っとくけど私、明日になったらまたあんたを殺しに行くから。死にたくないってんなら、ここで私からも逃げ出したら？
それはまた今度の話だろう。だいたい青崎に殺されるのならいいけど、あの子に殺されるのは嫌だ。
I guess being killed by Aoko is the lesser of two evils, right?
だからなんで？
だって顔も知らない、話したことさえない相手だ。
It was like someone had doused water over her blazing fury. Aoko's anger was snuffed out by the absurd simplicity of his reasoning.
顔も知らないって。
Could it be that Sojiro did not mind being killed by someone as long as he had met them? Aoko chased behind him, grimacing at the ever-increasing incomprehensibility of it all. From her spot atop the clock tower, the girl observed the growth of her familiar, Flatsnark, a savior of the discarded. It was a vile, vulgar fairy tale monster who provided those abandoned by fate with a glimmer of hope before snatching it away. Alice had it under her control, but she was still keen to keep the Snark from expressing its bad habits. After completing a lap around the park that had now reached the size of an entire town, the Robin made a situation report.
そう。外を目指しているの。
It seemed Aoko was prioritizing the safety of the boy, even if it resulted in wasting an entire day choosing to not capitulate on his decision was very much like her.
青子のことだから、時計台ごと私を焼き払いに来るかと思ったけど。
The blue bird cheeped in response. Was denying its master's portrait of Aoko, or agreeing that it was Aoko's style to do exactly that? An outsider might interpret its interjections either way.
退屈？
The robin jumped at being addressed so unexpectedly. It chirped and flapped its wings like a flustered servant, frantic to say otherwise.
珍しく気があったわね。いいわ。せっかくのゲームだし、もう少しだけ盛り上げましょう。
Calmly, she pulled out a small object from her pocket. It was a dark gray Easter egg, and emanating from inside it was the ticking of a clock. The robin knew it to be a ploy kickshaw with a bad attitude, far exceeding Flatsnark's known to be among the best in one-on-one situations.
いってらっしゃい。称える時間は20分に設定したわ。いつも通り控えめに壊れてきて。
And together with the witch's breath, the egg filled with praise disappeared. But I have a feeling this thing is Humpty Dumpty. Suddenly, a strong wind swept through the park. The words "I could have killed them all by myself" floated through the air. It was the disappointment of something enormous that was both visible yet overlooked. Aoko and Sojiro continued their dash to the boundary separating the park from outside. The curio horde that stood in their way had reduced in number. The iron fence that separated the two from the outside world was just over 300 yards away. Fortunately, there were no particularly large buildings barring their path. If the Ferris wheel had stood in their way, that would have spelled the end, but thankfully, it had yet to reach its full strength. The only things that appeared before them were weak oddities that could easily be handled by Aoko's simple magecraft.
これならなんとか。
She would have said make it to the fence if her lungs would only allow it. Since Aoko was utilizing the ample mana filling the park, her tank of magical energy was nearly full. Coupled with the fact that the condition of her body circuits was steadily improving to the extent that she would be able to unleash at least one all-out onslaught. Until, above her field of vision, something unusual was hovering. It was locked on Sojiro, hovering 10 feet above him over to one side.
しずきくん、ちょっと。
ああ、さっきからついてきてる。
Sojiro had seemingly noticed it before Aoko, hence his previous awkward glances toward the sky. In truth, it would have been stranger for him not to notice as the thing was practically glued to him. In terms of its size, the floating object measured about 3 feet in diameter. Tiles covered its exterior, about which a multitude of spinning lights danced about.
卵かな。
Sojiro asked, not really sure what to call it.
卵？卵って言ったら割れる卵！
Her bullets bounced off like it was made of rubber. That trait, the ability to deflect all outside interference, confirmed to Aoko that this thing was undoubtedly a ploy kickshaw.
やっぱり外からのルールじゃ壊れないか。しずきくん、あれから絶対に目をそらさないで。いい。何があっても見続けること。視界の隅に入れとくだけでいいから。
ああ。
Aoko picked up her pace as she barked orders. The Eggman who sat on the wall. He would crack, just as the tale spoke of. Nothing anyone could do or say would cause him to fall, but the moment they stopped looking, he would tumble down and break into pieces. Okay, I was right, it is Humpty Dumpty.
曰く王様の軍隊でも元に戻せない数の破片。
It was the Mother Goose poem, Humpty Dumpty. If Sojiro was its target, then the moment he averted his gaze, it would tumble and explode.
まあ爆発するかどうかは知らないけど。
Either way, it was going to scatter something troublesome when it fell. Its oval shape, the keyhole adorning the front, and writing inscribed upon it, they all made her anxious. If it was an egg, that meant it was going to hatch at some point. Even if he continued to stare, once the time came for whatever it was inside to come out, they would have even less ability to conserve their energy.
青崎、早すぎないか。あまり全力で走ると。
後のことは考えないで。いいからしずきくんは卵だけに集中して。
At this critical juncture, Breadmen stepped out to join the egg and block their path.
邪魔！
The Breadmen were marching forth in a grand battalion. At her level of firepower, Aoko should have easily mowed them down, however.
肩焼きかこの。
If Snap failed to do the job, that meant it was time for her to put her crest to use. Draw a formula-triggered bullet encased in a full-wind jacket. If her previous shots were the equivalent of a machine gun volley, then this was her artillery shot. Oh yeah, she's getting really powerful now. The hard-crust bread that had absorbed her snap without a dent scattered into thousands of tiny pieces at her jaw's torrent.
うわ。
Of course, the destruction did not end with just the breadmen. Sending bricks flying, the previously paved road was now bare. The nearby stall had turned into a skeleton of steel beams. It was a spectacle that made Sojiro question with force the wall of breadmen or Aoko's ability to lay waste to things would obstruct their path more.
ちょっとなんで距離取るのよそこ。そばにいないと危ないじゃない。ほらもっとこっち。言っとくけど、あんたがあいつらに囲まれちゃったらアウトよ。私人質とか意味ないタイプだし、そもそも区別して撃つとかそういうのできないし。
This made a lot of sense to Sojiro. He had not fully appreciated the part about hostages, but he got the gist of it.
つまり、今はどこであろうと危険なのか。
あんたね。
Offended though she was by his typical naive response, she could not help but be impressed. Sojiro was a straight arrow through and through. His eyes stayed firmly focused on the egg overhead even amidst the chaos of the melee unfolding before him.
その分なら安心か。物分かりは悪いけど、一度言われたことはきっちり守るあたり、あなたのいいところよね。
そんなことより青崎、俺の気のせいならいいんだけど、さっきのパン、硬くなかったか。
まあね、あいつら少しずつ強くなってきてるわ。大量生産が軌道に乗ったんで、今度はクオリティアップをテーマにしたのかも。しずきくんでもお察しの通り、ここからは手強くなっていく一方よ。あのパンたちでさえ個体差が出てきたみたいだし。考えたくないけど、そのうちジャム塗ったりレタス乗っけたり、果ては合体したりして。
Though she was joking, her eyes were dead serious. Sojiro shuddered at the thought of the situation growing even more dire.
じゃあ、そのうちミラーハウスの人形ぐらいに怖くなるのか、あいつら。
間違いなくね。そこまでレアなパンになったら、私も自分だけで手一杯になる。ところでしずきくん、ああいうのと喧嘩できる？
Sojiro shook his head, a look of complete aversion upon his face.
でしょ？なら急ぎましょう。いろいろ余裕ないんだから。
Aoko took a quick deep breath and began to sprint once again. Far in the distance through the fog, the iron fence waited, 300 paces away. As long as nothing happened, they would make it there in one piece. Sojiro followed after Aoko, holding on to that all too convenient hope. But hope was something ever fleeting. It lasted not even 300 yards. The edge of the amusement park may well have been the edge of the world. Dozens of undulating horizons could be seen, crowding the sky like a giant cloud or a thick curtain, or perhaps groaning lips. It was the end of the road, the outer limit of an outrageous and fantastical realm. And yet, Aoko found it to be much like the last page of an enormous picture book. The sight turned her mind blank. Well, this is about as bad as it gets, she thought. The Snark, this island of despair, had at last brought Aoko to her knees as she stared at the swelling border. The park indeed had an end. Even now, as Aoko and Sojiro had expected it to be, a fence divided the amusement park from the residential area neighboring it. It had both doubled in height and been made sturdier, another hurdle she had foreseen before even laying eyes on it. Expecting it to have been snarkified, Aoko had come prepared to demolish an obstacle or two. But this construction before her went far beyond mere wall. It was an ocean that separated the underworld from the mortal one. The iron fence was like a restless surging sea. One or two walls could easily be toppled. Even 10 or 20 could be dealt with one way or another. Between the power left in her body and that which filled the park, putting on a brave front was within her power. She could fully mobilize her circuits and her crest to the point of burnout in the last-ditch effort, like some reenactment of the parting of the Red Sea.
でも、それで終わり。
Even if a path could be open, she would not have the energy left to walk it. And it was obvious what would become of her afterward. The residents would hardly forgive her for wreaking such havoc around their park. Like ants drawn to honey, they would swarm the helpless girl and tear her to pieces. Despondent and exhausted, she felt the faint sting of remorse, escaping the park. Looking back on how they had gotten here, Aoko recognized that her choices had been her undoing. Under the golden full moon, beams of steel bent and merged like wireframe sculptures. It was only a matter of time before the amusement park itself became one colossal monster. The horde of familiars gathered in the plaza where Alice was had formed an impenetrable blockade around her. Just above the head of the boy beside her, the whispering egg called Scratch Dumpty continued to shuffle what appeared on its surface.
Aozaki!
しずきくん。
The boy's voice snapped Aoko out of her trance, if only for a moment. The stark reality of the situation quickly dawned on the novice mage. The sheer hopelessness of it all, as it ripped out and snatched away any will she had to resist.
ゲートに行こう。ここはどうしようもないけど、入り口ならもうちょっとマシだろ。フラットスナークだっけ？こいつにもルールがあるって言ったじゃないか。なら、これは役割の問題だ。初めから鉄柵は通れない壁だけど、ゲートなら出入り口として機能しているかもしれない。
Sojiro had not given in to panic. Aoko found herself honestly admiring Sojiro's ability to analyze Snark's characteristics given the circumstances. Now calm, she steeled her resolve.
そうね。確かに門はあると思う。けど、たどり着くのは難しいわ。一番弱かった焼きたてパンですら、今はもうあれだもの。広場や入り口には、もっと上等なのがたむろしてるだろうし、門だって、あの観覧車以上の怪物かもしれない。確か、大きなキッツィちゃんだったでしょ、正門って。
青崎はゲートには行かないのか。
まあね。それよりこっちの方が現実的だし。
うん。
Aoko took another glance at the undulating iron fences. It was too late to achieve their goal of making it out alive. In that case, she decided to prioritize the other promise she had made.
今からこの鉄柵を壊すから、あなたはそこから外に出て。それで、私の役割はおしまいよ。
Alright everyone, I'm going to end the video here for today. Thank you all for watching. When we come back, we're going to continue on, and hopefully, conclude this part of the chapter.